Welcome back. This lecture is a continuation of my earlier lecture. In the last lecture we have discussed how to estimate frictional and dynamic losses in air conditioning ducts, and I also mentioned briefly the design rules to be followed while designing air conditioning ducts. So, the specific objectives of this particular lecture are to discuss classification of duct systems, discuss commonly used duct design methods, namely velocity method, equal friction method and static regain method, and then discuss briefly the performance of duct systems and discuss fans and fan loss, and finally discuss briefly the interaction between fan and duct systems. And at the end of the lecture you should be able to classify duct systems, design air conditioning ducts using either velocity method or equal friction method or static regain method, then evaluate performance of duct systems, then discuss and use fan loss, finally discuss interaction between fan and duct systems. So, let us first look at classification of air conditioning duct systems, how they are classified. Based on the load on duct due to air pressure and turbulence, duct systems are classified as low pressure systems, wherein the air velocity is less than or equal to 10 meter per second and the static pressure is less than or equal to 5 centimeters of water column. These systems are known as low pressure systems. Then you have medium pressure systems where the velocity is still less than or equal to 10 meter per second, but the static pressure is between 5 centimeter to 15 centimeter of water. Then finally you have high pressure systems where the velocity is greater than 10 meter per second and the static pressure is between 15 to 25 centimeters of water column. Okay, so this is how normally the air conditioning systems are classified. Now, what is the effect of velocities? High velocity in the ducts results in smaller ducts and hence lower initial cost and lower space requirement. Since the velocity is high, for the same flow rate we can reduce the cross sectional area, that is how you get smaller ducts. Okay. However, if you have high velocities, you will find that the pressure drop will be higher. As a result, the fan power consumption will be higher. Okay, so this is a disadvantage of high velocity systems. In addition to this, due to high velocities there will be increased noise, hence high velocity air duct systems require a noise attenuation. Okay, so these are the effects of high velocities. The typical recommended air velocity in supply ducts are as follows. For residences, normally the velocities are between 3 to 5 meter per second, and in theatres the velocity is between 4 to 6.5 meter per second, whereas in restaurants it can be between 7.5 meter per second to 10 meter per second. As I said, one of the important criteria for selecting the air velocity is noise. Okay. So, in residences normally noise is not tolerated, so you have to maintain low noise, whereas in places like restaurants and all, where as such you have high background noise, you can afford to have higher velocities. So, because the higher noise generated because of the higher velocities is not a problem. Okay. These are the normally recommended values of, however, there are some special applications where one may have to go for still higher velocities. For example, in aircraft air conditioning systems or in ship air conditioning systems, the air velocities can be as high as about 30 meter per second. Okay. So, here it is noise is not the main important criteria, but the size of the duct is very important. Okay. You would like to minimize the size. As a result, people normally use higher velocities. Okay. So, the velocity is selected based on mainly on noise criteria, okay, also on fan performance and the power consumption of the fan. Okay. Now, next let us look at duct design. Normally, what is the input for duct design? From load and psychrometric calculations, the required supply air flow rates to each conditioned space are known. This we have discussed earlier. Then from the building layout and the location of the supply fan, the length of each duct run is known. For example, let me show a typical building layout. Let us say that this is a typical air conditioning duct layout. We locate the, let us say, the plant here. So, you have the fan located somewhere here, and these are the outlet supply air outlets. That means these are the different zones where your condition spaces are maintained, let us say. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So the A, B, C, etc. are the duct portion. So you can see that for this kind of duct layout, you have the fan here, and the location of these outlets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. are fixed by the design of the building. Okay. And you also know from the location of the fan what is the distance, for example, from this point to this point. Okay. Similarly, from this point to this point. So physical location is known. So you know the distance, and once you know the distance, you know what is the length of the ducts. Okay. So normally the length of the ducts is known. Okay. Then from this given input we have to design the duct. And what is the purpose of the duct design? The purpose of duct design is to select suitable dimensions of duct for each run, and then to select a fan which can provide the required supply air flow rate to each conditioned zone. That means from the taking the input from the cooling load calculations and from based on the building specifications and the location of the plant room, we have to design a duct system. Okay. Design of duct system means mainly selecting the dimensions of the ducts. Okay. If you are selecting a circular duct, what is the diameter? If it is a rectangular duct, what are the two sides? Okay. Because the lengths are known, and once you select the dimensions, you also have to select a suitable fan which can provide the required amount of air flow rates to each of these conditioned zones. Okay. So this is the purpose of a duct design. The duct run with highest pressure loss is called as index run. Okay. I will explain this a little later. Due to the several issues involved, the design of an air conditioning duct system in large buildings could be a sophisticated operation requiring the use of computer aided design or CAD software. Nowadays, when you have very large buildings requiring the hundreds of rooms with different conditioned spaces located at several points, then the duct design or duct layout can be extremely complicated. Okay. What I have shown is a relatively simple duct layout, but actual duct layout in large buildings can be very complicated. So if you want to design it optimally, then you have to use advanced methods, and you may also have to use some computer aided design software for designing the ducts. Okay. However, we in this lecture we shall discuss some simpler methods which are normally used for simple layouts. What are these simpler methods? These simpler methods, first method is known as velocity method. Second one is known as equal friction method. Third one is known as static regain method. Okay. So I shall discuss only these methods in this lecture. First, let us look at velocity method. The various steps involved in this particular method are: first, select suitable velocities in the main and branch ducts. Okay, that means let us say that again let us go back to this one. Let us say that this is our duct layout. So in the velocity method, the first thing we do is we select velocities, okay, in different duct runs. For example, this duct run is known as your main, okay, whereas these duct runs are called as branches, okay, different branches. So first what we do is we select velocities in main and in the branches, okay, based on let us say noise criteria, or based on the space considerations or fan power considerations, etc. We have to select suitable velocities in the main and in the branches. This is the first step in velocity method. Once you select the air velocities, we can easily find out the dimensions of the main and branch ducts from air flow rates and velocities. Remember that we know the required air flow rates from psychrometric calculations. Okay, so you know the air flow rate, and once you select the velocities, air flow rate is nothing but cross sectional area multiplied by velocity. So flow rate is known, velocity is known, so you can find out what is the required cross sectional area. So if you are selecting a circular duct, let us say, then from the cross sectional area you can easily find out the diameter. If you are selecting a non-circular duct, let us say a rectangular duct, even then you know the cross sectional area, so you have to fix either one side or the aspect ratio so that you can find the other side. Okay. So it is very easy. Once you know the flow rate and velocity, finding the dimensions of the duct are easy. Okay. So this is the second step in the velocity method. Okay. Then the third step is find frictional pressure losses from velocity and duct dimensions, either using the frictional friction chart or using the frictional pressure drop equation. This I have discussed in the last lecture. As I was telling, once you know the flow rate Q, this is known, and once you know the dimensions, okay, because as I said Q dot is equal to A into velocity. So velocity is known, Q dot is known. So first find out A. Once you know A, you can find out D. Okay, so D is also known to us, Q dot is also known to us. So we can find out the frictional pressure drop using this equation, which I have discussed in the last lecture. or you can also use the friction chart. For example, in the friction chart, if you remember, this was discussed in the last lecture, we have the frictional pressure loss per unit length on the x axis, flow rate on the y axis, and different constant velocity lines. These are the constant velocity lines. Okay. So, once you select the, let us say, velocity, okay, and if you know the flow rate, then you can find out what is the frictional pressure drop per unit length. Okay. So, this is the third step in the velocity method. Then we also have to find dynamic losses in each run. I have discussed how to find dynamic losses in each run in the last lecture. Then we have to find select a fan that can provide sufficient fan total power, fan total pressure for the index run. Okay. So, having estimated the dynamic and frictional pressure losses in each duct run, you have to find out what is the duct run that gives the highest pressure drop. Okay. So, that is known as the index run, and we have to select a fan which can provide sufficient fan total pressure for the index run, that means for the maximum possible pressure drop conditions. Okay. So, for example, let us again look at this duct layout. Let us say that our index run is here, okay, like this, let us say, that means A to G to H. Okay. That means the pressure total pressure drop from this point to this point is the highest compared to other pressure losses, okay, or pressure loss in the other duct runs. Then you call this AGH as the index run, because the total pressure loss in this particular duct run is the maximum. Okay. So, we have to select a fan which can provide this maximum pressure loss. Okay. So, this is the method. So, first select the velocity. This is a very simple method, as you can see. First select the velocities, suitable velocities. Since flow rates are known, from the velocities find out the dimensions. Once you know the dimensions and the flow rates, you find out the frictional pressure drops, and then from the duct layout, depending upon the branches and bends, turns, etc., you find out the dynamic losses. Then if I add up frictional and dynamic losses for each duct run, okay, and find out the duct run which gives the maximum pressure loss. That particular duct run is called as the index run, and you select a fan whose FTP is equal to the total pressure loss of the index run. Okay. So, this ends the design purpose and the procedure as far as velocity method is concerned. Okay. Now, what is to be done is we have to use balancing dampers in each run. And what is the purpose of balancing dampers? The damper in the index run is left completely open, while the other dampers are throttled to maintain the flow rate at the required design values. Okay. So, again, if you go back to the duct layout, let us say that in the index run the total pressure loss is 100 pascals. Okay. So, I select a fan which gives me an FTP of 100 pascals, but in one particular duct run which is not the index run but another duct run, the total pressure loss is 10 pascal, let us say. So, if I am using a fan which develops 100 pascal of FTP and it is connected to a duct run which is having 10 pascal only, then you cannot maintain the flow rate. The flow rate will be higher in this particular shorter duct run. Okay. So, what we have to do is we have to artificially introduce some friction, okay, or some resistance, so that for each duct run ultimately the total pressure loss will be same, which is equal to the FTP. Okay. That is the reason why we have to use dampers, and in the index run the total pressure loss is equal to the FTP. So, the damper has got to be completely left open, whereas in the other runs where the total pressure loss is less than the FTP, you have to adjust the dampers in such a way that the additional resistance offered by the damper plus the actual resistance will be equal to the total pressure loss. Okay. So, that is how the system has got to be balanced. Okay. So, this is in brief the velocity method. And what are the typical characteristics of velocity method? As you can see, velocity method is very simple, but one important thing is that it requires experience for fixing suitable velocities in main and branches. So, this is the first step in any velocity method. You have to select suitable velocities. How do you know what is suitable velocity? Okay, so this depends upon the experience. Okay, depending upon the application, depending upon various other considerations, you have to fix suitable velocities. If you do not select proper velocities, then you will end up with a non-optimal duct design. Okay. So, the success of this method depends upon fixing the suitable velocities. Okay. Next, this method is not very efficient because as the dampers in all but index run have to be closed partially, leading to noise and losses. Okay. So, as I have explained, we use dampers in all the runs, okay, and the dampers in the index run is completely kept open, whereas in the other runs, we close the damper so as to introduce additional resistance. Okay. This is actually introducing losses deliberately, okay, because by closing the damper partially you are introducing losses, okay, and this will lead to not only loss in efficiency, but also the generation of noise. Okay. So, the use of dampers is not very efficient. Okay. So, as a result, the velocity method, which requires adjustment of dampers for maintaining the FTP same in all duct runs, is not very efficient from this point of view. Okay. Next, let us look at the second method known as equal friction method. In this method, the frictional pressure drop per unit length in the main and branch ducts are kept same. Okay. That means, everywhere the frictional pressure drop per unit length, that means delta Pf by L is constant. Okay. Constant, for example, for this main, for this part of the main, for this branch, for this branch, for this branch, etc. Everywhere this parameter is same. This is the principle of equal friction method. That is why we call it as equal friction method. Okay. So, that means delta Pf by L of for duct run A is equal to delta Pf by L of duct run B, that is equal to delta Pf by L of duct run C, etc. Okay. Then the stepwise procedure is as follows. Select a suitable frictional pressure drop per unit length, so that the combined initial and running costs are minimized. Okay. So, in the earlier method we have fixed the velocities, whereas in this method we have to select a suitable frictional pressure loss per unit length. Okay. That is the first step. Then the equivalent diameter of the main duct is obtained from the selected value of delta Pf by L and the air flow rate. For example, the total air flow rate to the main is given by this Q dot A is equal to Q dot 1 plus Q dot 2 plus Q dot 3 plus Q dot 4 plus Q dot 5. For example, if you look at the figure, this is the air flow rate Q dot A, okay, sorry, Q dot A through this main duct run A. You can see from the mass balance or volume balance that Q dot A is nothing but Q dot 1 plus Q dot 2 plus Q dot 3 plus Q dot 4 plus Q dot 5. Okay. So, this is equal to summation of different QIs. Okay. So, which is known to us, right. So, Q dot A is known from the air flow rates in different conditioned zones. Then from the Q dot A and using the delta Pf by L value, the equivalent diameter of the main duct is obtained, okay, either using the friction chart or using the following equation. Okay. So, you know that I have discussed this equation before, we know this and we have fixed this. So, you can easily find out what is the equivalent diameter of duct run A. Since delta Pf by L is same for all the duct runs, the equivalent diameter of the other duct runs are obtained from the equation. Following equation is used: Q dot to the power of 1.852 divided by D equivalent to the power of 4.973 of A is equal to this of B, which is equal to this of C, etc. Okay, and we know this. We know this. Okay, we have calculated D equivalent, just now I explained, we have calculated this from the frictional pressure drop per unit length and the Q. So, this is known to us and this is also known to us. So, you can find out this. That means, the equivalent diameter of duct run B can be obtained by equating these two. Similarly, by equating these two, you can find out the equivalent diameter of duct run C. Okay. So, this procedure is followed for finding the equivalent diameter of all other duct runs. Okay. So, this is as far as the circular duct is concerned. If you are using a non-circular duct such as a rectangular duct, the two sides are obtained from the D equivalent value and a given aspect ratio. I have discussed this earlier. If you know the equivalent diameter of a rectangular duct, how to find the two sides. Either you have to specify the aspect ratio or you have to specify one side, so that you can find the other side. I have also specified an equation, or I have also given an equation which was derived from the equivalence of these two ducts, how to find the two sides from the equivalent diameter. Okay. This was discussed in the last lecture. So, the velocity of air through each duct is obtained from the volumetric flow rate and the cross sectional area. Now, from the dimensions of the ducts in each run, the total frictional pressure drop of that run is obtained by this equation. Delta Pfa is equal to nothing. This is very simple. This is nothing. Frictional pressure drop in A is nothing but frictional pressure drop per unit length in A multiplied by length of duct run A, LA is the total length of duct run A. Similarly, in B, the frictional pressure drop in B is equal to frictional pressure drop per unit length in B multiplied by length of B. Okay. In this particular method, the delta Pf by L of A is equal to delta Pf by L of B, etc. Okay. So, we can find out what is the frictional pressure drop in each duct run. Now, after we find the frictional pressure drop, we have to find what is the dynamic pressure losses in each duct run. Okay. As I have explained in the last lecture, the dynamic pressure losses depends upon the velocity, and it also depends upon the duct layout, how many bends you have, how many whether you have a branch or takeoff, or whether you have any other coils, etc. So, depending upon this information, one can calculate the dynamic pressure losses. Okay. So, once you find out the frictional pressure losses and dynamic pressure losses of each duct run, the total pressure loss of that particular duct run is nothing but the sum total of dynamic and frictional pressure losses. Okay. So, that is how we can find out the total pressure loss in each duct run. Okay. So, that is given here. The total pressure drop in, for example, duct run A is equal to delta P of A plus delta P d A, similarly for B, and so on. Next, the fan is selected to suit the index run with the highest pressure loss, okay, as before, and the dampers have to be installed in all the duct runs to balance the total pressure loss. Okay. So, in brief, this is the equal friction method. So, let me again summarize equal friction method. This equal friction method starts with selecting suitable value of frictional pressure loss per unit length. Okay. So, this is the first step in this method. So, once you know the frictional pressure drop per unit length, then you can find out the duct dimensions because you know the flow rate. Okay. So, flow rate is known, frictional pressure loss per unit length is known. So, from these two you find out the duct dimensions. Once you know the duct dimensions, you can find out the velocities from the duct dimensions and the air flow rate. So, once you know the velocities, you can find out the dynamic pressure losses in each duct run. Then you have to sum up the dynamic and frictional pressure losses of each duct run, and you have to find out the index run, that means the run which gives the highest pressure loss. Okay. So, this is known as index run, and you have to select a fan whose FTP or the fan total pressure is equal to or greater than the total pressure loss of the index run. Okay. Then since the total pressure loss of other duct runs are less than that of the index run, we again have to install dampers, and dampers have got to be adjusted so that you get the required flow rate in each supply air outlet. Okay. So, this is the equal friction method. Now, the equal friction method is simple and is most widely used. Okay. Among all the conventional methods, this is the most widely used method, and this method is better than the velocity method, as most of the available pressure drop is dissipated in the duct runs, not in balancing dampers. Okay. So, this is better than the velocity methods, because what we can do is, if you have frictional pressure drop available, then you can reduce the dimensions of the duct, so that you can dissipate the available frictional pressure drop in the ducts itself. Thereby, you can go for smaller ducts, right, rather than wasting it in the dampers. Okay. So, that is how this method is slightly better than the velocity method, and this method is suitable when the ducts are not too long. Okay. If the ducts are very long, what happens is the ducts near the fan get over pressured. Okay. Then this system is not very good or recommended for this kind of air conditioning systems. Okay. And equal friction method can be used for both supply as well as return ducts. Procedure is same for both supply as well as return ducts. Next, let us look at the third method, that is static regain method. This method is commonly used for high velocity systems with long duct runs, especially in large systems, that means large capacity systems. We normally use static regain method, because you will find that this method is more efficient compared to velocity method and equal friction method. In this method, the static pressure is maintained same before each terminal or branch, that is why the name is static regain method. And the procedure followed is as given below. First, velocity in the main duct leaving the fan is selected. You do not have to select velocities in all duct runs, but you just have to select the velocity in the main duct. Okay. Then velocities in each successive runs are reduced such that the gain in static pressure due to reduction in velocity pressure equals the pressure drop in the next duct section. Okay. So, let me explain this. Let us say that this is a typical duct run. let us say that air is coming here and you have one branch here, and then you have the upstream branch, let us say, I am sorry, downstream branch, you have upstream here, downstream and the branch. Okay. So, what is done in this method is, in the, for example, if I am talking about the downstream you have velocity at the point 2, section 2 is V2, let us say, and the velocity in section 1, that is upstream, is V1, right. So, what is done in this method is V2 is reduced, that means V2 is less than V1. So, when you are reducing velocity, what happens? There is a conversion of velocity pressure into static pressure rise. Okay, this I have discussed in the last lecture. This is what is known as static regain factor. Okay, this rise in static pressure due to reduction in velocity pressure is such that it matches with the frictional and dynamic losses in the section from point 1 to 2. Okay, that means whatever is the frictional losses from point 1 to 2 is equal to the static regain factor R multiplied by the velocity pressure at point 1 minus velocity pressure at point 2. Okay, PV1 minus PV2. PV2 is always lower than PV1. That is how you select the dimensions of the downstream duct. Okay. So, you find that because you are balancing exactly the drop in velocity pressure with that of the losses, you find that the static pressure at point 1 and 2 will remain same. That means PS1 will be equal to PS2, right. So, what is section 2? Section 2 is nothing but the upstream for the next downstream section and the branch. Okay. So, you keep the static pressure here equal to static pressure here. Similarly, if you have further branches and downstreams, again at this point also you have to select these duct dimensions in such a way that the static pressure in the downstream will also remain same as that of the upstream. Okay. So, this is the velocity, this is the static regain method. Okay. Now, if section 1 is the outlet of the fan, then its dimensions are known from the flow rate and velocity. Okay. What I mean is, let us say that you have the fan here, okay, and then we know what is the total air flow rate here, Q total is known, because this is nothing but the sum total of all the air flow rates to each outlet. So, this is known to us, right, and we are selecting a suitable velocity here. So, once you know Q dot and V, then you can find out what are the dimensions here. Okay. The dimensions are known here. Then what we have to do is, you have to reduce the velocity here. You may have to increase the dimensions for that purpose. So, you reduce the velocity such that the static pressure remains constant. Okay. However, since both dimensions and velocity at section 2 are not known beforehand, we have to use the trial and error method to obtain the required dimensions of section 2. What it means is, we have to use this equation. Okay. This equation has got to be used to fix the dimensions of section 2, right. Here you have V2 on this side, and this side also you have V2, which is not known. Okay. So, we have to use the trial and error method, because we do not know the dimensions, since hence we do not know velocity also. Since velocity appears on right hand side as well as left hand side, you may have to use the trial and error method so that this equation is finally satisfied. Okay. So, this is the procedure for static regain method, and this procedure is continued in the direction of airflow, and the dimensions of the downstream ducts are obtained. Okay. All the downstream ducts are obtained by following the same method. Okay. Keeping the static pressure constant before each branch or terminal. Okay. So, this is the principle, and then the total pressure drop is obtained from the pressure drop in the longest run, and a fan is accordingly selected. Thus, this step is same for all the methods. Okay. The fan has got to be selected finally to suit the pressure loss in the largest duct run, longest duct run, I am sorry, that means the duct run with the highest pressure loss. Okay. So, you will find that the static regain method yields a more balanced system, and it does not call for unnecessary dampering. Okay. The dampers are required in velocity method and equal friction method for balancing, whereas in static regain method you are changing the dimensions in such a way that the static pressure remains same. So, you do not really require dampering. Okay. Since dampering is not required, efficiency will be higher. However, there are certain problems with static regain method. What are the problems? As velocity reduces in the direction of airflow, the duct size may increase in the airflow direction. Okay. So, this is one major problem. Okay. So, you have to progressively reduce the velocity. Okay. So, as a result, the duct size may go up. Second problem is that as the velocity reduces in the direction of airflow, the velocity at the exit of the longer duct runs may become too small for proper air distribution in the conditioned space. Okay. That means, let us say that you start with some velocity in the main, okay. Then you go on reducing the velocities in the direction of the airflow, and finally at the outlet, the supply air outlet, you may find that the air velocity is too small. Okay. Too small means what? Too small for proper air distribution inside the conditioned space. Okay. Because you have to reduce the velocity, because you are trying to convert the velocity pressure into static pressure rise. Okay. So, that is the principle of this method. So, as a result, when you are using this method, velocity reduces in the direction of airflow, but if it reduces too much, then it may affect the air distribution in the conditioned space. Okay. This is another problem of static regain method. If such a problem occurs, what is to be done is you have to again go back and increase the velocity of the main duct which you have selected in the first step. Okay. So, that means this requires some kind of a trial and error or iteration method. So, you initially select some velocity and make sure that the velocity at the supplied outlets is sufficient for proper air distribution. If it is not sufficient, you have to go back and either increase or decrease the velocity. Okay. You have to decrease the velocity if you find that the velocity is too high, or you have to increase the velocity if you find that the outlet velocity is too low. Okay. So, you find that as a result of this, the design calculations are more involved compared to equal friction method. Okay. Velocity method and equal friction methods are simpler, whereas the static regain method is more complicated. Now, let us look at briefly the performance of duct systems. For the duct system with air in turbulent flow, the total pressure loss delta Pt is found to be proportional to the airflow rate. Okay. Total pressure drop. Okay. Total pressure drop includes frictional as well as dynamic losses. So, it is observed that if the airflow flow is turbulent in nature, this is proportional to airflow rate square of airflow rate. Okay. That means you can write delta Pt is equal to C into Q dot square, where C is the resistance offered by the duct system. And for a given duct system, C may vary if the filters become dirty and or damper positions change. Theoretically, let us say that the filters do not get dirty, filters stay as they are, and if you do not change the damper position, then the resistance value remains same. Okay. For the given duct system, the given duct system means a duct system with given dimensions, right, and given length, etc. And variation of delta Pt with airflow rate is parabolic. You can see from this equation that if you plot the total pressure loss or total pressure drop versus Q dot, you find that you get a parabola. Okay. That means you get a curve of this nature. Okay. So, for a given duct system, as I said, this is the delta Pt, total pressure loss, and this is the airflow rate meter cube per second, right. So, we have seen that delta Pt is equal to C into Q dot square. Okay. So, you get a parabola which passes through the origin. Okay. That means when Q dot is 0, delta Pt should be 0, right. So, let us say that this curve A is under design conditions. Okay. So, that means at the time of design or for design you have selected this kind of a duct performance curve or duct characteristic curve. But however, with usage the filters may become dirty or you may close the damper. Okay. If the filters become dirty or if you close the damper, you get this curve. Okay. That is curve B with dirty filters or closing of dampers. What is happening when the filters become dirty or when you are closing the dampers? For the same flow rate, the pressure drop increases obviously. Okay. Resistance increases, so pressure drop increases, right. Now, if you open the dampers, let us say that the filters are clean, but you have opened the dampers more compared to the design condition, then you find that the duct performance curve is given by this blue line, line C. Okay. This is with dampers opened, right. So, for when you open the dampers, you find that for the same flow rate the total pressure loss will be less. Okay. Because the pressure loss across the damper is reduced because of the opening. So, as a result you get less total pressure loss. Okay. So, this kind of curves are known as duct performance curves. Okay. What is the use of these curves? You can see that since delta Pt, as I have written here, is proportional to Q dot square. If you know the delta Pt value at one point, let us say, okay, at 1, and if you know flow rate at 2, then you can find out what is the total pressure loss at the second condition true. That means if one is the design condition, at design condition you know what is the total pressure loss and the flow rate, and you want to find out an off design condition where the flow rate is different, you can easily find out what is the total pressure loss using this equation. Okay. So, that is the use of duct performance curves. Next, let us look at system balancing very briefly. What do you mean by system balancing? In large buildings, after the air handling unit consisting of ducts, coils, etc. is installed, it has to be balanced for satisfactory performance. Excuse me. So, what do we mean by balancing? System balancing requires measurements of actual flow rates at all supply air outlets and return air inlets. So, you have to do elaborate measurements, carry out elaborate measurements of air flow rates at all air outlets and inlets. Then the dampers have to be adjusted so that the actual measured flow rate corresponds to the specified flow rates. And sometimes as a part of system balancing, it may also require adjusting the fan speed to get required temperature drop across the cooling or heating coils and required air flow rates in the conditioned zone. Okay. Ultimately, why do we do system balancing? Let us say that you have you carried out the cooling load calculation, then you have designed the ducts, you have selected the fan, you have installed everything, right. So, finally, you have to get the required performance, that means you have to get the required temperatures in the conditioned space. Okay. This depends upon the temperature of the supply air and also depends upon the supply air flow rate. Okay. So, you have to make sure after you install everything that you are getting the right amount of air at the right temperature. Okay. So, what is done is, since several assumptions are involved at the time of design, it does not happen automatically. So, some kind of adjustment is required to get the required conditions. Okay. So, this is known as system balancing, and this involves several steps and it is carried out in different manners. So, basically what it involves is the measurement of for example, temperature and air flow rates at all supply air outlets and return air inlets. Okay. So, that means you have to have accurate instrumentation and you have to measure all these parameters. And if you find that the supply air flow rate is, let us say, more than required, okay, then you have to reduce the supply air flow rate. Then you can reduce the supply air flow rate either by changing the damper position or by varying the fan speed. Of course, if you are using a fan for the all same fan for all duct runs, then if you are varying the fan speed, then it will affect the air flow rate in other spaces also, right. So, fan speed variation may not be possible always. So, normally the option left for us is to vary the position of the damper in that particular zone to get the required air flow rate. Okay. So, you vary the damper position, again measure the flow rate and see that you are getting the required flow rate. Okay. So, this process has to be continued till you get the required amount of air flow rates in all the conditioned zones. Okay. So, at this point the position of the dampers are fixed. Then sometimes it may also require you may also require the variation of fan speed. For example, if you are finding that the required temperature drop across the cooling coil is too small or too high, okay, which may lead to too much of dehumidification or too less of dehumidification, you may have to adjust the air flow rate. Okay. So, again this requires adjustment of fan speed, right. So, this procedure is known as system balancing. Normally system balancing is the last part of the air conditioning system installation and design and installation, and after system balancing normally the air conditioning plant is handed over to the building owner. Okay. Normally in large air conditioning systems, the system balancing can be a very costly business and it may take a lot of time and effort, right, because it requires measurement of temperatures and velocities precisely at several locations. Okay. So, most of the times in smaller buildings and all, people may skip this procedure altogether. Okay. They may do it on a trial and error basis. If you find it too cold, you may close the damper, or if you find it too warm, you may open the damper. Okay. Not by taking any measurements. Okay. But however, in large systems, system balancing is always recommended, because once you balance the system properly, you get the maximum possible benefit from the system. Okay. So, system balancing has to be done at least in the large air conditioning systems. Okay. Next, let us look at fans, okay, very important component of any air conditioning system. The fan is an essential and one of the most important components of almost all air conditioning systems. Small or big, you have to use a fan for circulating air. Okay. Fan is a costly component, it consumes a lot of power, okay, and it also generates noise, right. So, it is a source of noise, it consumes power, it also incurs a lot of initial cost. So, you have to select the fan properly. Okay. If you incorrect selection of fan can give rise to bad performance or poor performance. Okay. Normally, the centrifugal fan is most commonly used in all air conditioning systems because it can efficiently move large quantities of air over a large range of pressures. Okay. So, generally you find that in almost all air conditioning systems centrifugal fans are used. The other type of fan, namely the axial flow type fan, is very rarely used in some special applications. And the operating principle of a centrifugal fan is exactly similar to that of a centrifugal compressor. Okay, we have discussed the operating principle of a centrifugal compressor, how a centrifugal compressor increases the pressure of refrigerant. Okay, similarly, a centrifugal fan increases the pressure and kinetic energy of air. Okay, so the principle is almost same. Normally, forward curved blades are used in low pressure systems. Okay, whereas airfoil type or backward curved blades are used in high pressure large capacity systems. Okay. Compared to forward curved blade centrifugal fans, the airfoil type or backward curved blades give higher efficiency. Okay. Since efficiency is important in large systems, normally large systems use airfoil type or backward curved blade fans. Okay. Normally the airfoil blades are costlier. I mean the centrifugal fans based on airfoil profile is costlier compared to forward curved blades. Okay. So, in smaller systems forward curved blades are used, in larger systems airfoil type or backward curved blades are used. Okay. Next, let us look at fan laws. These are very important and extremely useful. What are fan laws? The fan laws are a group of relations that are used to predict the effect of change of operating parameters of the fan on its performance. Okay. If a particular operating parameter is changed, how the fan is performing. Okay. So, that is the use of fan laws. Okay. And these laws are valid for fans which are geometrically and dynamically similar. Okay. If the fans are geometrically and dynamically similar, you can apply the fan laws. If they are not geometrically or dynamically similar, you cannot use them. For example, you cannot use the fan laws or you cannot use the fan laws for comparing performance of a forward curved blade with a backward curved blade. Okay. They are not geometrically similar. Okay. So, you cannot use fan laws to these two. However, you can use the fan laws to one forward curved blade fan with that of another forward curved blade fan of different size maybe. Okay. So, this is what is known as your geometrical similarity, right. Similarly, you also have to have dynamic similarity, that means the force ratios for these two fans have got to be same, right. So, for these geometrically and dynamically similar fans one can use the fan laws. Now, what are the important operating parameters? The important operating parameters are density of air, which depends on the air pressure and the temperature. Then rotative speed of fan, that means RPM or RPS of the fan. Then the size of the fan, what is the diameter, width of the impeller, etc. So, these are the three important operating parameters. Out of these three, size of the fan is important at the time of design. Okay. So, at the time of operation we are mainly concerned with density of air and rotative speed of fan. Okay. So, we would like to know for a given fan, okay, how the variation in density affect the fan performance and how the variation fan speed affects the fan performance. Okay. So, the fan laws that I am going to present are related to these two operating parameters, that is density and the rotative speed of the fan. Okay. Now, for a given air conditioning system with fixed dimensions, fittings, etc., it can be easily shown that the airflow rate Q dot is proportional to omega. Okay. Omega is the rotational speed in, let us say, revolutions per second. Okay. So, remember that this is for a given air conditioning system, that means the dimensions etc. are fixed, the cross sectional area is fixed. Okay. So, for a given air conditioning system, Q dot is proportional to speed only, because you know that Q dot is equal to A into velocity. So, for a given duct system, cross sectional area is fixed. So, the airflow rate depends only on the velocity of air. Okay, and the velocity of air directly depends upon the rotational speed of the fan. Okay, so as a result you can write Q dot is proportional to rotational speed of the fan. Okay. Similarly, the static pressure rise delta Ps is proportional to rho v square by 2. This is the static pressure rise, remember, where rho is the density of air and V is the velocity of air in the duct, right. Next, the important performance parameter is fan power input, okay, W dot. Fan power input is proportional to Q dot into delta Ps plus Q dot into rho V square by 2, okay. So, the power input to a fan consists of two parts. You can see that on the right hand side you have two parts. The first part is the power input required to raise the static pressure of a certain amount of air, okay. So, this part is utilized for raising the static pressure of the air. The second part is this. So, this part accounts for the power input required to increase the kinetic energy of the air, okay, of a given flow rate, right. So, it consists of static pressure rise part and kinetic energy part. So, these are the typical relations which relate the important performance parameters like air flow rate, static pressure and the power input to density and rotative speed. Now, using the above relations, the fan laws that relate performance variation to density and fan speed can be obtained, okay. So, we use these three relations to arrive at the required fan laws, okay. So, first law, the law for fan law 1. Fan law 1 is applicable when density of air remains constant and the speed omega varies, okay. So, this law is valid under these conditions. So, when the density of air remains constant and when the speed varies, from the previous relations we find that the air flow rate varies with rotative speed, okay. Q dot is proportional to rotative speed, that means if you increase the speed, Q dot increases directly, okay. Whereas the static pressure rise is proportional to omega square. Why it is proportional to omega square? Static pressure rise is proportional to V square and V is proportional to omega. So, static pressure rise is proportional to omega square and the power input is proportional to omega cube. Or remember that omega is the revolution rotational speed, okay, revolutions per second or revolutions per minute or even radians per second, okay. So, the power input is proportional to cube root of rotative speed, whereas the static pressure rise is proportional to square of I am sorry, it is cube of rotative speed, square of rotative speed for static pressure rise and directly proportional as far as the air flow rate is concerned, okay. So, this is valid for constant air density, right. So, what is the use of this law? The use of this law is that, for example, when the density of air is remaining constant and I increase the let us say that I double the velocity, okay. The fan is running at 10 RPS, 10 revolutions per second. I keep the density constant and increase the rotative speed to 20 revolutions per second, okay. So, I would like to find out at these new conditions what is the new flow rate. So, from this fan law 1 states that Q is directly proportional to omega, that means if you double the rotative speed, Q also becomes double, okay. And static pressure rise is proportional to square of the rotative speed. So, if the rotative speed doubles, then the static pressure rise increases by 4 times, okay. And the power input is proportional to cube of the rotative speed. So, if you double the rotative speed, the power input increases by 8 times, okay. So, you can easily find out what happens when the rotative speed varies using this particular law, okay. Next comes second fan law 2. This is valid when air flow rate remains constant and the density varies, okay. So, this law is valid for this condition. We are keeping the air flow rate constant, but density is varied, right. So, when you keep the air flow rate constant, Q dot remains constant and density is varying. So, the static pressure rise is proportional to density. So, if the density becomes double, static pressure rise also becomes double. If density becomes half, static pressure rise becomes half, okay. And the power input is also varies directly with density, okay. This relation comes from the, if you remember from the expression, for example, delta Ps is equal to rho V square by 2, okay. We are keeping Q dot constant, that means we are keeping the velocity constant, okay. If you keep the velocity constant, static pressure rise is directly proportional to density, okay. Similarly, the power input is also directly proportional to density. The third law is valid under these conditions where the static pressure rise, okay, delta Ps remains constant and density varies, okay. So, when static pressure rise remains constant and density varies, you find that the air flow rate varies like this: q dot is proportional to 1 by square root of density and static pressure rise remains constant. Okay, so that is the condition of the law. And rotative speed also varies inversely with the square root of density, right. That is the reason why the flow rate also varies like this. And finally, the power input to the fan also varies in this fashion, okay, 1 by square root of density. Okay, so these are some typical fan laws. Now you can also arrive at different fan laws. For example, if you take the size also into consideration, you can derive more number of fan laws. Okay, now let me give a small example which will show you the usefulness of fan law. Okay, example: a fan is designed to operate at a rotative speed of 20 revolutions per second, and at the design conditions the air flow rate is 20 meter cube per second. The static pressure rise is 300 Pascal and the air temperature is 20 degrees centigrade. At these conditions the fan requires a power input of 1.5 kilowatt. Keeping the speed constant at 20 rps, if the air temperature changes to 10 degrees centigrade, what will be the air flow rate, static pressure rise and power input? Okay. So, how do we do this? First we are varying here, the density varies because air temperature varies, right. However, since speed remains constant, air flow rate remains constant. Okay. That means you have to apply fan law 2. Okay. What does the fan law 2 say? Fan law 2 is this: air flow rate q dot remains constant and density rho varies. So, and according to this law, static pressure rise is directly proportional to density and power input is also directly proportional to density. Okay. So, using this you can easily find out, for example, air flow rate remains constant at 20 meter cube per second and static pressure rise delta Ps at condition 2 is directly proportional to density and density is inversely proportional to absolute temperature. So, you can find out delta Ps2 is equal to delta Ps1 into rho 2 by rho 1, which is equal to delta Ps1 into T1 by T2. T1 and T2 are temperatures, absolute temperatures, as I said. So, that is equal to 300 into 293 by 283, which is equal to 310.6 Pascals. Okay. Next, power input. Power input is also directly proportional to density. That means power input at new condition 2 is equal to power input at condition 1 multiplied by the density ratio rho 2 by rho 1. So, if you substitute the values, you find that the required power input is 1.553 kilowatt. Okay. So, you can see that you can see how useful the fan laws are. For example, if you do not have any fan laws, it may be required to test the fan or may take measurements to find out what will be the new air flow rate, what will be the new power input, etc. Right. But by using the fan laws, we can avoid testing under all possible conditions. It is not practical to test fan under all possible conditions or test all kinds of fans which are geometrically and dynamically similar. Okay. So, under these conditions you can use these simple fan laws and you can find out performance at one condition if the performance at other condition is known. Okay. So, this is the usefulness of fan laws. So, finally, let us look at interaction between fan and duct systems. Okay. This particular curve shows the performance fan performance curve. Okay. This is a fan performance curve at rotative speed omega 1, this is a fan performance curve at rotative speed omega 2, and this is your duct performance curve. Okay. Both are plotted versus air flow rate q dot in meter cube per second, right. As I said, the duct performance curve is a parabola and fan performance curve of a centrifugal fan varies like this. And there is a point of intersection, for example, at a given rotative speed omega 1, the duct performance curve intersects the fan performance curve at this point. So, this point is known as the balance point at this flow rate, and at this flow rate the total pressure loss is equal to delta PT1, which is equal to FTP1, that means the fan total pressure developed by the fan. So, at this point everything is perfectly balanced. Let us say that now we have to reduce the air flow rate, and if the air flow rate is reduced to Q2. Okay. At the reduced air flow rate you find that the total pressure loss of the duct is reduced, okay, that is delta PT2. However, if you do not change the fan, you find that the fan total pressure is here, okay, this is higher than this. So, if again want to balance the system, you may have to reduce the speed of the fan, so that again you get a new fan performance curve such that when they intersect, the flow rate will be q dot 2 and the total pressure loss is equal to fan total pressure obtained by the fan. Okay. So, if you have this kind of a matching curves, you can easily find out the balance points. This is the use of these curves. Okay. So, this I have already mentioned, the point of intersection of the fan performance curve and the duct performance curve yields the balance point for the combined performance of fan and duct system. If the flow rate is reduced to Q2, then the total pressure loss reduces to delta PT2. To match the reduced flow rate and the reduced pressure loss, the speed of the fan has to be reduced, or the position of the inlet guide vanes of the centrifugal fan have to be adjusted to reduce the flow rate. Okay. So, you have to balance the both fan as well as the duct at every changed condition. Okay. At all points they have got to be balanced. Okay. So, if you have the performance characteristic curves, using them you can find out the balance points. Okay. So, at this point I end this lecture. Let me quickly summarize what we have learned in this lesson. In this lecture the following points are discussed: classification of duct systems, commonly used duct design methods, that is velocity method, equal friction method and static regain method. Then we have also discussed very briefly the performance of duct systems. Then we have discussed fan loss and what is the use of fan loss, and finally we have discussed very briefly the interaction between fan and duct systems. Okay. At this point I end this lecture and I continue this in the next class. Thank you. Welcome back. In the last two lectures we discussed transmission of air. Once you transmit the required amount of air to the conditioned space, you have to distribute it properly within the conditioned space, so that ultimately comfort conditions can be maintained inside the air conditioned building. In this lecture I shall discuss space air distribution. Okay, so the specific objectives of this particular lecture are to introduce air distribution systems and discuss air distribution performance index, describe factors affecting air distribution, describe performance aspects of circular and rectangular free stream jets, describe various distribution devices, describe airflow patterns, describe selection criteria for air supply outlets. At the end of the lecture you should be able to explain the importance of air distribution and air distribution performance index, list factors affecting air distribution, define blow, drop, spread and entrainment, evaluate performance of circular and rectangular free stream jets, list various distribution devices, draw airflow patterns and finally list selection criteria for air supply outlets. So, let me give a brief introduction to space air distribution. As I have already mentioned, once the required amount of supply air is transmitted to the conditioned space, it is important to distribute the air properly inside the conditioned space. Thus, it is important to design or select suitable air distribution system, and the air distribution system selected should create a proper combination of temperature, humidity and air motion in the occupied zone, and it should avoid draft in the occupied zone. What do we mean by draft? Draft is defined as a localized feeling of cooling or warmth. Draft is measured above or below the control room condition of 24.4 degree centigrade and an air velocity of 0.15 meter per second at the center of the room. The effective draft temperature